Well, thank you so much, Commissioner, for being here. We greatly appreciate it. Hopping right in, this is a big race. Can you tell me why you're running?
Because it's time that Oregon has a leader that understands the function of government from an executive perspective, not just a legislative perspective. As a Marion County Commissioner, I have struggled for the last 5 years to have an active partner in the governor's office with all the issues that we face across Oregon, from homelessness to housing to economic development. It feels like we've had an agenda-oriented individual in that office for far too long, and I just want to come in and run the government so it's efficient and effective. I want to lower the cost of government so that way we're not paying so much in taxes as citizens. And I'm the underdog, as most would say. My opponent spent over $20 million on name ID, but we have a stark difference between the two of us, and I want to show voters what they can have in leadership.
Well, what is that big difference?
So I don't come from the legislature. I don't have the need to create more laws and rules. My job as a commissioner is to make sure that the neighbors in my community are served properly, that businesses can thrive, that our health and human services departments are effective. And I've been a very effective county commissioner. Marion County is the 5th largest county in Oregon. It's the most diverse, and it's equally urban and equally rural. So I feel like I'm prepared to be able to come into the governor's office and understand the urban-rural divide and be able to get to work on day one. So
one of the big issues that a lot of Central Oregonians feel is that this side of the Cascade Mountains often gets forgotten about. If you win the primary and win the general, how are you going to make sure that the people on this side of the mountains feel that impact?
Well, I'm going to be here. So one of the things that we don't have, and we haven't had historically, is a governor that has relationships with county commissioners. I'm proud to say that I'm endorsed by more than 50% of Oregon commissioners right now, and I spend time with them in their local communities. They're the grassroots motivators. They're the public servants that do the service delivery model, whether it's filling a pothole or making sure a young family has access to food and benefits. We're literally the ones that are present. I believe that Central and Eastern Oregon and frontier counties have been left out of the conversation for far too long. They shouldn't be competing with Portland. They should be competing with each other. And right now, we need to draw people over to the east side of the state. But more importantly, we need to make sure that people on the east side are thriving, so they want to stay here in Oregon as a unified state.
So obviously, one of those ways for people to get across is obviously through our highways and road system. And one of the big issues that people are talking about right now is this ODOT funding bill. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, I think it's unfortunate that the governor wasn't more creative with her local partners. We didn't need to have that $4.2 billion tax package forced through. What we needed was a leader to sit down with the director of ODOT and prioritize differently, to look at the funding space and live within their margins and to partner locally. Commissioners are also the road authority. Counties have more roads per capita than the state has as a whole. She missed an opportunity to talk to us about how we can lower the costs together. We do the same work. It feels to me like the state wants to be in charge and be everybody's brother, but too big of a brother, in my opinion. I would have looked at every single line item, and I would have put things on hold. There's several things at ODOT right now that are not the priority. If we're talking about safe roads and bridges, then we need to create a real sustainable plan to execute that and not create new things until we've accomplished what was already on the table.
Well, what are those things that aren't a priority?
Well, at the end of the day, I don't think that we should be putting housing on top of bridges in Portland as a start. We have an entire state that has a need, not just downtown Portland and a bridge that goes to Washington. That is a very important bridge in this state, and of course everybody wants to be safe when they're crossing the river. But at the end of the day, we don't have any relationship either with the federal government. The federal government has created too many dense rules that we as an Oregon state and counties can't keep up with. We need to do a better job of just distributing dollars and, again, setting priorities and sticking to those priorities, not creating these large, overwhelming systems that don't belong within that agency.
So you talked a little bit about that federal-state partnership. We're just coming out of a government shutdown that saw a lot of fractured parts that affect Central Oregonians a lot. Can you talk about how, if you get into the governor's mansion, how you're going to work with the federal government to make sure that needs across the state of Oregon, and especially in Central Oregon, are going to be met?
I'm going to do it the same way I do it right now. As a county commissioner, I have effective relationships in the federal government across agencies and the White House. It doesn't mean that you have to be the best friend with the person in charge. I'm not the best friend with the current governor today, but when she asks for a meeting, I'm going to show up and have that conversation because that's what leaders do. I understand that the current administration federally has some priorities that the nation voted for. That is the reality of democracy, and we need to just accept the face of what that looks like. It's not to be antagonistic and to take a policy approach that puts us in danger or harm, which is what our current governor has done, and that's unacceptable to me. She should have sat down with the president and found a way to compromise and to work together, and instead she's just poking the bear.
So obviously one of those big issues is immigration. Would you work with the current administration on their immigration policy?
What I would do is look at the state of our economy and understand who's here today. Right now, Oregon doesn't have a good grasp on who's here legally and illegally. You know, back when President Reagan was in office, he provided amnesty to individuals that came to America to work and to be American citizens and to live that dream. The Biden administration did the exact opposite of that. They allowed a lot of criminals to come into this state, and my county is not any different than any other county in this state where we have people living here illegally causing harm. That's a huge burden on our neighbors. We are currently the county that's in a lawsuit to ask for the federal court to tell us what we can and can't do under Oregon sanctuary law. I don't believe it's appropriate for anybody to be living amongst our community just scot-free. We all have to earn our way. We all have to invest in the system, and we need to do it in a way that we can have safe communities. Unfortunately, I think the individuals that are here illegally that have committed a crime, they should go back to their country of origin. I don't believe my community should have to pay for their crimes. The folks that came here and aren't legal today, that are just working and trying to make it for their families, I think the federal immigration system needs to take a good hard look at it. Just like any policy, just because it's written on paper doesn't mean it can't be rewritten. And we need to take a hard look at that and determine if it's the right system for America today. And if it is, I'll support it.
So one of the other issues that we've obviously been talking a lot about is education. New education numbers have come out, and they're not as great as one would hope. What's your plan to rebuild our education system in the state of Oregon?
Yeah, so I served on the Salem-Keizer School Board before I was a county commissioner, and I'll tell you one of the biggest challenges that we have in Oregon today is that we don't allow parents in the classroom like we once did. Parents are trying to survive, and they miss a lot of opportunity to know what is going wrong in our education system. School districts should be the ones running what's happening in their neighborhoods. It shouldn't be a top-down approach, which is exactly what we have here in Oregon. We need to go back to real accountability in the classroom. We need to be able to serve each kid individually. Every brain is different in how it learns and comprehends, and we've created a one-size-fits-all system that doesn't work. But we've also removed academic standards where we're not testing kids to determine if they have comprehensive foundations so they can move forward. In Oregon, we're actually teaching 4 grade levels below in just about every single grade. The average 4th grader in Oregon today is struggling to read. It used to be every 3rd grader needed to read on time. Now it's just like, can any kid read? That's unacceptable. We need to create a new system in Oregon that creates accountability in the classroom, partnership with the parents, and is a real invested relationship with teachers and counselors and principals. We've asked those individuals to do too much. They are not mental health therapists, they're not doctors, and they're not parents of our children in the classrooms. They're educators, and we need to give them the ability to go back into doing the things that they are passionate about, which is loving their kids and teaching them, and expecting our parents to show up when things are difficult.
Well, one of those issues, though, is that students aren't coming to class. So how can we make sure those students do come to class? I mean, from one study just alone recently, the Ben Lapine School was missing 25% of their students have missed at least some part of the year.
Yeah, well, there's no accountability. I mean, I have 3 children. My youngest is a senior in high school. It's my responsibility to get her to school. It's not the school's responsibility to get her there. I believe that we have a lack of investment in schools because we have a lack of partnership in our communities. We today expect teachers to do everything. It's not their job to drive to my house and take my child to school. It's their job to make sure that my child is on target for success, and when they see things that are going off the rails, to reach out because they have a relationship with me, and also to connect to services if there's a need at home that they shouldn't provide because they're academics, into the county system of care that's supported by the state. We just have a broken system in Oregon at all levels, and I want to reform that. I want to make sure that that cycle works just like a wagon running down the road.
So Central Oregon is home to a lot of beautiful area, and it's gorgeous to be here. But that also comes with the fact of new companies are coming in, which is drawing a lot of energy from our grid. How can we balance conservation and energy?
Well, I think we need to have that conversation. It's been far too long since we've had more than one industry at the table. We've let the environmental system in Oregon take over. We've not allowed businesses and environmental and natural resources to sit at the same table together and create a sustainable plan going forward. And I want to set that table, and I want to hold all parties accountable. In Oregon, our grid is taxed. We don't have enough systems online to produce the energy that we need, and the data centers that are being built across the state are taking a lot off the grid. That impacts residential and commercial customers, not just as a ratepayer, but as somebody that might not be able to turn their light switch on in the future because the grid can't sustain it. It's also not just about energy input into the system. It's also about transmission lines. Oregon's land use law is really complicated, and it causes a lot of barriers that are costly that we need to look at. There's a whole system approach to every single system in Oregon that we haven't had a leader in the governor's office take a look at. One, because I think they frankly don't understand it, and two, they always have an agenda of their own that they need to accomplish.
Well, how can we expand that energy supply, though? Would it require new building of, power plants, or what kind of power?
Yeah, so we need to diversify that portfolio. A few months ago, I went with a lot of local leaders from across the state to a nuclear energy site up in southern Washington. I don't know why we keep ruling nuclear off the grid, essentially. We have the ability to partner with Washington and private energy developers to use nuclear energy. We also need to take a hard look at the cost of wind energy and solar energy. In addition to that, right now, we have a lot of communities fighting back on the reality that water is producing energy. Hydropower is really important. The co-ops locally are struggling with the cost to produce that. Bonneville is obviously the largest player in the space, and they do a great job of keeping it affordable, but we have an imbalance in that system. And we have an imbalance because we don't have an actual plan. Oregon lacks the ability to have a plan to execute. We just do things on whim, and then we end up being reactive. I want to be proactive.
So one of the big issues as well is wildfires. We just concluded our wildfire season. This year was luckily not as bad as previous years, but it doesn't mean it's not going to get worse next year. How can we make sure that the state of Oregon is prepared for when the fire season comes back?
Well, maybe we shouldn't be a state that's just reactive to lightning strikes, which is what we've been for far too long. I firmly believe that we need to manage our forests. We need to go back into them, and we need to harvest our timber. We need to replant. We need to clear the ground floor. Not only will that help with wildfires, it'll also create local jobs in our communities that are livable wage systems for families. I'm a county commissioner in Marion County, and in 2020 we had one of the biggest wildfires in Oregon history. And I'm the recovery commissioner there. I can tell you about all the challenges that we faced locally with our state agencies not being prepared to respond, not just financially, but with actual people power and systems, and their lack of relationship federally and the challenges that caused, and lives are lost because of it. I know we've made some really good gains since 2020. Grant County is an example of a county that was really impacted by wildfire. And there was an interesting approach, I think, from the state and the feds to try to tackle that, but it wasn't fast enough. And wildfires aren't the only issue. We have flooding over here. We have flooding in Southern Oregon. It's the same systems that are supposed to stand up and be reactive to counties who are essentially the first on the ground, boots on the ground systems. And because we lack relationships, there's delays and people are harmed.
Awesome. Well, one final question I have for you, kind of a little bit of a curveball.
Sure.
Our friends over on the eastern side of the state, they feel a lot more connected with possibly becoming part of Idaho. What are your thoughts on that?
So it's not a curveball because I've come over here and met with several individuals that want to become Greater Idaho, and I can understand why. They feel left out and ignored, and I think that's unacceptable. I made a commitment to set a table for them. I also informed them of the civic process, and the governor doesn't have authority in that space, but the governor's job is to listen and then to make connections. And while I am not a proponent of losing most of the best part of the state to Idaho, I understand that they want to be heard, and I'm going to show it for them.
Well, thank you so much, Commissioner, and thank you everyone for watching. We appreciate it. To watch the full interview, go to ktvz.com. Thank you, Commissioner.
Yeah, thank you.
Pleasure.